On today's show, the injury-riddled Bucs fall to the Patriots. Do they have what it takes to take down the Bills? I'll discuss next on this edition of the Bucs Report. Let's get it! Well, hello and welcome into this edition of the Bucs Report, part of the Bucs Report podcast network. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Bucs Minicast. And the best way that you can help grow this show is to subscribe to the Bucs Report on YouTube, like the videos, and comment anything down below. So in this edition of the Bucs Report, we talk about the Bucs as they fell to the Patriots, and you would swear that the season is over, that this team sucks, that they should wave the white flag, that they should hire a new coach. I've heard all of those things, and last I checked, the Bucs are still in first place in the NFC South. I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about the injuries that are surrounding this team, and ultimately, do the Buccaneers have what it takes to take down the Bills? But just to get it going here, let's talk about the last game against the Patriots and giving credit where credit's due. That's a pretty good Patriots team, right? I don't think that there's any real ands, ifs, or buts about it. But the Buccaneers, they fought valiantly. And one of the things that's pretty apparent to me, and I think it's apparent to you as well, and, the team knows it, is that Baker is not 100%. The Buccaneers play best when he can scramble. If there's not an open receiver, that he will oftentimes run for the first down. And what we've seen from him this season is sometimes he doesn't dive. He'll just wait to take that impact. And that's kind of really getting drawn into focus right now, that, the team has played well this season, minus some big players. I'm talking Evans, Godwin, Wirfs to start the season, that they found a way to rally, and pretty much all their wide receivers just totally depleted, not next man up, the next man up. And the Buccaneers have found a way to win games. But now that we don't see a Baker Mayfield that is 100% healthy, he's still in the game. Could you imagine if he wasn't in there, that when he cannot scramble the way that he did earlier in the season, that is getting really drawn into focus. And if you're not too familiar about it, is that Baker is dealing with multiple injuries, including a knee and oblique issue, but is still playing through them. He has acknowledged that his physical condition has impacted his speed and scrambling ability, though he has stated that the bye week provided some relief. The Buccaneers list him with these issues, and it is generally understood that he is managing his injuries for the remainder of the season. So the impact on play, he has admitted that the injuries have limited his ability to scramble effectively, and his overall speed is not at its peak. So that's the tough position, and that's the hard part about having a quarterback on your team that has happy feet. And to be clear here, I think that the Buccaneers would not have won as many games had he not done those things that he had done. So I'm not trying to hold that against him. But the one thing for me that's really getting drawn into focus here is the late game heroics that we saw to start the season. And I asked Steve Versnick when he was on the show, and we talked about the sustainability of that we're seeing that drawn into focus, that in a lot of ways, the Buccaneers got lucky to start the season, right? That they found a way to rally and win these games late, but they're running out of luck. And with Baker not 100%, that is where it's getting difficult. But let's just talk about the game. Like I said, what went wrong? And the biggest takeaway is the Bucs lost, not because they were outmatched, not because the offense failed, but because the defense gave 3 explosive touchdowns of 55 yards or more. That's the game. And those plays flipped everything. And when you're in a tight matchup and your offense is actually keeping you in it, and then boom, 72-yard touchdown, 55-yard run, 69-yard run, it's like, man, what do we even do with that? And those are the moments in the game that make the difference, because it's not like the Bucs didn't score. The Bucs put up 23 points. Baker threw for 273 yards and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. That should be a winning stat line, right? I mean, if you looked at it and you didn't look at the box score, you just looked at who scored, yardage, all of those things, and you obscured the final score, you would assume that the Buccaneers won. But the Patriots hit those huge chunk plays, and that's the story of the game. And that is ultimately why the Bucs lost. And what went wrong? And why did it go wrong? The offense did enough to win. Baker was actually sharp. He gave you everything you could have asked for. 3 touchdowns, 0 turnovers, almost 300 yards. He looked comfortable even behind a battered offense. Our rookie receivers, man, they showed up. You know, Egbuka, again, the saving grace of this team. The kid is looking like a future wide receiver 1 in the waiting. 6 catches, 115 yards. A lot of those came in big moments. And then talking about depth upon depth. Tez Johnson touchdown, some nice separation. Another guy who's growing every single week. In the run game as well. You know, 113 yards on a Patriots defense that usually doesn't give anything on the ground. That's not nothing. That's offense. We did our part, but defensively, the defense gave up the game. You can't give up a 57+% of an opponent's total yards on 4 plays. You just can't. Like I said, a 55-yard rushing touchdown, a 54-yard reception late in the game, and that dagger, that 69-yard touchdown run that sealed the deal. Those 4 plays were practically New England's entire offense. And when Todd Bowles comes out and says, we didn't coach well enough, it starts with me. I mean, talking about a guy falling on the sword, that the offense was there, but, you know, the defense runs through him as well. And, I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. Accountability is good, but those breakdowns in that game, they're on everybody. The coaching, the tackling, the angles, the communication. And you know what makes it even sting more? This is the first game the Bucs lost all season without turning the ball over. Baker did the things that he should do, the things that he's capable of doing in the position that he's in, right? That we know he's dinged up, like I illustrated off the top of the show. They protected the ball. They moved the ball. They executed in the red zone and still lost the bleeping game. So the late game moment, and then, man, you think you've got another shot when Tyke Smith makes that diving interception in the end zone. Incredible play. Rookie saving the day. Then Baker drives the team down to the Patriots' 27-yard line. Crowd's quiet. You feel the momentum shifting, but 4th down comes. Pressure hits, and the drive falls short. Again, the late game heroics, the end was going to come at some point. Next possession, the Patriots take a handoff, 69 yards to the house. Game, set, done. That's how fast that one turned over. The Buccaneers should have won the game. Should is the operative word. Did they do that? Of course, no. So what now and what's next? Fixing the defense has to be priority number 1. Those explosive plays, we can't sugarcoat it. They were breakdowns, big ones and repeat ones. That's communication. That's discipline, tackling, and coaching. And Todd Bowles knows it. He took the heat publicly. Now the staff and the players got to fix it privately. Keep building the offense. Look, the young weapon showed promise. Cade Otton continues to be one of Baker's most reliable targets. Egbuka is coming into his own. The run game showed signs of life, and that's minus Bucky, right? If they stack the growth, this offense can absolutely take the next step over the second half of the season. But big picture in the NFC South, like I talked, it's not doom and gloom. It's not like fire Todd Bowles. that the bottom's fallen out. Not yet, anyway. They still sit atop of the NFC South. That's the good news. If there is good news after giving up 3 touchdowns, the Bucs are still in first place. The division is still right there. Everything is still in front of them, but momentum, yeah, that matters. And right now, we need to bounce back. Do the Buccaneers have what it takes? That's the big question. Ultimately, the ball is in their court. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about the injuries, and we'll talk about how the Buccaneers prepare for the Bills. Straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Bucs Report Podcast Network, also simulcast on the Bucs Minicast podcast feed, a part of the Fans First Sports Network. Again, for all of your Buccaneers news, check out thebucsreport.com. All right, in the second segment here, we're talking about how the Buccaneers got into this position and the injury picture and what it actually costs you. So let's walk through this. It's not just names on a list. It's how each absence forces a change in play calling, coverage reads, and the way the defense approaches you. And just to talk about it, let's talk about the players, if you don't know, that are out. Bredesen, Godwin, Bucky Irving, Hassan Reddick, and Marquise Watts, all listed on Bucs.com as being out on Sunday. And then, again, you got players that aren't 100%. I'm talking about Baker Mayfield, and it should really come as no surprise that the Buccaneers are in the position that they're in. Now, Bucky Irving being out is huge. He's not only a runner who can break a long one, he's a back who creates mismatches in passing games. Without him, you don't just lose to burst, you lose checkdowns and play action leverage. And, Rachaad White doing what he's done, and Tucker and all of this, that, we are getting, I guess I want to say surprising performances, but not too surprising. I'm pleasantly surprised with what I've seen from Tucker, big picture this season, and that Rachaad White, I don't think is as we thought he was going to be, but has shown some promise as well. And that, Bucky Irving, we saw him practice, obviously not good enough to play on Sunday, but is edging closer to return. People were talking about that, he was kind of jumping around at practice, that, hey, put this guy in. As we find out, it's more of the shoulder area there that is the area of concern. So I think that we want to do the right thing and wait for Bucky in particular to be 100%, because we don't want an injury to exacerbate it, where he takes a couple steps back, especially if we can have him back 100%, as we should, knock on wood here, that he will be able to help this team later in the season. And Chris Godwin being out shrinks the field. Defenses don't need to respect the underneath seams with the same intensity. So Mike Evans gets doubled or bracketed more often, and rookies like Egbuka becomes the primary reads far earlier than they should. But, like when I talk about who's in the game, and that's when Evans is back, rather, I'm just talking about, big picture here, how this team is going to perform, that it is a bit concerning, that, we're dealing with a lot of injuries, and how does this team overcome and get back into the win column? Because I talk about Evans being back there when he's, 100%, whenever. And I'm also talking about, Godwin and these other players, that it is a difficult position for the Buccaneers to be in when you're having to draw into depth. And I'm talking deep depth here. As far as Godwin is concerned, it's almost like, this team is kind of just used to him not being here. That, he's, and a lot of times, most of the time, it's not his fault that he's injured, right? That, you see some dirty tackles, this or that. But at the end of the day, he hasn't been there to help the team contribute. So that's why you've seen guys like Egbuka have to step up. And also, Johnson and Johnson, that we've seen them step up as well. And Cade Otton, that, this team has had to shift. It has had to come up with ways to try to win these games, because it has not been easy thus far. Bowles and the staff are being careful with the players that are out, and that's smart, but it also is frustrating because we want reinforcements soon. Guys practicing on a Wednesday does not mean they're 100% on Sunday. That's the balance the team is trying to strike. If Evans and McMillan are back in December, again, kind of ball in the air. At first we thought that McMillan was going to be back after the bye week. It would change everything in a hurry. If those returns are delayed, the team needs to find reliable options within or on the wire. Again, I think that Light is going to have to go out and make an acquisition. Certain positions are depleted. And, I think it's kind of just a wait and see approach, right? That if you see Godwin, Evans, McMillan, what position? They're not going to be 100% right out of the gate. They've missed a substantial amount of time. I'm talking McMillan in particular. He's been out for a long time. How are these players going to look when they are finally back to go? And the emotional and tactical cost of the injuries. There is a mental edge that goes with having your top players in the lineup. Confidence breeds aggressive calls. Without it, conservative calls come creeping in. The offense becomes predictable, and predictability is death against a good defense. And, like I said, giving credit where credit's due, the Patriots are good. That the quarterback for them, really, really good. There's a bit of question mark in the post-Brady era in New England that, it definitely was a fall from grace for a bit there. But I think that things are going well in New England. I don't wish them the best, but just kind of observationally here, that team seems to be back in good form, and we're hoping the Bucs, can get some of these players back. We hope that Baker Mayfield, what he said is that he felt a bit better after the bye week. We need to see him closer to 100%, and I know that's outside of his control. And as far as Baker's concerned, he's used to playing through injuries. And this is just another thing that he might be injured far more than he's letting on. But that's what's getting drawn into focus, is that the Buccaneers were able to overcome wide receiver depth issues, running back depth issues, some line issues. But, Baker Mayfield, even being diminished, is a blow to this team, as was evident, I'm going to say, in the game against the Patriots. He did the right thing. No turnovers, passed for some good yards there, but his mobility taking some steps back, that has been a tough blow for this team. And do they have what it takes to overcome the Bills? That is what I'll talk about straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Bucs Report, part of the Bucs Report podcast network. Again, check them out. BucsReport.com. This podcast also simulcast on the Bucs Minicast podcast feed, a part of the Fans First Sports Network. So in the final segment of today's show, kind of did the post-mortem on the Buccaneers versus Patriots. And the thing of it is I just talking about the fans, and it's funny how that a loss, to the Patriots, and it's just a loss when you subtract all the positives that I talked about in the first segment of the show, and how the Buccaneers did a lot of things right. All of that is forgotten when you had a leaky defense that didn't hold up. That I don't want to push the panic button. I don't want to even talk about the panic button. I don't want to hear any talk about bowls or this or that. This team is still in a good position. They found a way to rally all season. Of course, like I said in the second segment, not having Baker 100% is not ideal, of course, but it is what it is as the Bucs prepare to take on the Bills. Now, the Bills, last I checked, are in second place. Many people kind of had them penciled in as making a big push for the Super Bowl. Still might. But I think that they have taken some steps back. I'm saying that comparatively, where people kind of had them penciled in. So let's talk about that in the final segment of today's show. Segment 3, why the game comes down to Baker versus Josh. Now, Baker Mayfield has to out-duel Josh Allen, and I still think one of the better QBs in the league. With your run game limited and receivers missing, Baker's matchup performance is the fulcrum. The Bucs need him to be steadier, smarter, and a cleaner version of himself. If Baker can manage the pocket and kind of just rely on the pocket. Don't try to, as much as I hate to say this, don't try to put the cape on and be Superman and run the football and, really take the TKO and just miss, the remainder of the season. Try to hang out in the pocket a little bit more, wait for the plays to develop and throw the football away. Like Brady used to say, we can lose a game or two, but if I'm out, well, that's good. That could spell the end of the season. And that's true for Baker as well, because when you start to dive into Teddy Bridgewater football or whoever the case might be, that's when things can be difficult. So take single shots when they're there and avoid forcing throws into trouble. I know that historically interceptions have been an issue, a bugaboo for Baker. He's kind of turned it around, and Tampa can keep this game close. If Baker tries to do too much and he throws a couple of turnovers, the Bills will turn those into points quickly. That is Jameis Winston football, if you remember. That if there's not a man open, I'm going to kind of close my eyes and chuck it down the field, and hey, something's got to happen, right? I mean, it just has to. Not the case. So how the Bucs can try to slow Josh Allen down, you can't completely take Allen away, but you can do things to make him uncomfortable. Mix in disguised pressures, spy him at times, force him to throw on rhythm instead of throwing on improvisation, and pressure him early and often with one-on-one matchups on the edge, and do not give up explosive plays over the top. That is easier said than done. That's easy to say with me, watching it on my couch on any given Sunday, but it is the only path to make this chess match instead of a shootout. That historically the Buccaneers have struggled against the Bills, right? That I don't think this is going to be any easier. Now, specific game planning for Baker, what he needs to do: manage the clock, run when it helps you protect the ball, avoid hero plays in the middle of the field, use short passing to build rhythm. When the deep shot opens, take it, but do not force it. Protect the football in the red zone. Short fields turn into points. Turnovers in your own territory are the quickest ways to lose games. And on play calls, be smart with pace. Keep the Bills from getting into a rhythm defensively. Eat the clock when you have the lead. Flip the script and be aggressive when the Bills look vulnerable. Because like I say, you turn the football over, the game's going to be over sooner than anyone thinks. You got to play smart football to win this game. And, the Bills, second place, that's still pretty good. And they are a really good team, and they will make you pay on any miscue. And I know that Baker's frustrated, not being as mobile as he is accustomed to. However, like I say, you got to play smart ball here, or they will make you play. So matchups to watch on defense: Cole Bishop is a guy to account for. The Bucs have to scheme away his impact, or at least be mindful of the range over the middle. If Bishop is chewing up targets, the Bucs need to move the ball to the other areas and exploit matchups elsewhere. Another thing to watch out here is Bucs handle Allen's rushing lanes. He is more dangerous with legs. Cut off escape lanes force him to make throws from clean pockets. Special teams and small edges that matter in a game like this: a punt return, a special teams penalty, or a field goal can swing or make or break this game. The Bucs must win hidden yardage battles. Flip field position, get one or two explosive returns. Those tiny things build margin you need when offense is limited. And, like I say, the Buccaneers got off on the right foot against the Patriots. And the offense was good, right? It was the defense. So the defense needs to button it up. They need to batten down the hatches and just kind of keep doing what you did offensively. If Baker wins the duel, what happens? If Baker plays patient, efficient, and keeps turnovers to a minimum, Tampa can absolutely win this. The Bills have been turnover prone this year. Force one or two. Let Baker short fields do the rest. That's the path to upset. If he does not, what we are looking at, if Baker is off, if the line continues to fail on early down, and if the run game cannot set the tone, the Bucs will find themselves in a shootout hole. That is bad news against a team with Josh Allen. Turnovers become touchdowns. It spirals quickly. Now, the stakes and the psychology weight. This is not just another Sunday. Both teams sit near the top of their divisions. The result affects playoff perception, seeding, and team morale. A loss would make the next few weeks feel heavier. A win would validate the Bucs' ability to fight through adversity. And that's the big thing. They came off a nice win over the Saints, as was expected. They fell to the Patriots. And, just taking a look at the other losses this season, there's not a lot, right? That, big picture, the Buccaneers have done some good things. I'm thinking Lions, Eagles in there, where those were tougher games, of course. But I think that the Buccaneers have showed resiliency. That's going to be the test right now. That, it was kind of like last year. They were kind of like full of themselves and then the bottom fell out. That I agree. That I think that if they lose this game, then I think the bottom is really going to fall out. I don't think the season is over. Again, they're still in first place in the NFC South, but I think that it would give them, the swagger that they need to go forward because, it's not early in the season anymore. We're into November here, and that if you take, you lose a few games here, that it could spell the end of your season. And that's the hard thing about the NFL, right? You take a look at baseball, you look at basketball, you look at hockey, that their seasons are much longer than the football season. So you can kind of afford a losing streak here or there and still, wind up on top. For the NFL, for the Buccaneers, they're sitting pretty now, but if they drop a game, 2 or 3, well, that could change everything in a hurry, right? And I think the luxury, as a matter of fact, I know the luxury for the Bucs is they play in the NFC South, which is big picture kind of horrible. If you want to compare it to, around the league, that 500 records don't cut it. 500 record in the NFC South, that's one thing. So I think the Buccaneers are in a good position. Again, I don't want to panic. I think it's easy to panic. It's easy to dive into the negative waters. But I think, when you want to just take a look at the facts, and the facts are they're in first place. They lost a game that if you removed, you covered your eyes and didn't look at the final score and just looked at the stats, you would have thought that's a good game. The defense was not so good. That needs to get cleaned up. I'm not trying to sweep that under the rug. But Baker Mayfield, minus his, excellent mobility, not turning the ball over, throwing for some touchdowns, there's a lot of positive. It's just not going to be easy, nor should it be, right? That, you take a look at the teams around the league and they're ready to high five each other because they won a game. I got some Vikings fans near me and, they win one game and you swear to God that they're ready to, order their Super Bowl cake, right? That with the Buccaneers and, the rest of the league, they understand that, you need to win these big games. You need to get put through your paces. If you want to win the above all end all, and Lord knows you want to, the Super Bowl, you got to beat the best teams that are out there. And, you take a look at it, the Bills, they're the next one on the list. They must win games like this against truly great opponents. And I would have it no other way. It's like stealing a kid's lunch money. Great, you got some money, but you stole it from a kid, right? That I want this win to be valid, that they went through their paces and they faced adversity and they faced injury. So at the end of the season, there's no one trying to take anything away from them. That, they didn't have any injuries. Yep, they did. They didn't have any setbacks. Yes, they did. They found a way to persevere and overcome. That is what truly great teams are made of. And to be clear here, every team has to go through this. But the Buccaneers, oftentimes got a little bit of love to start this season, have faced a little bit of adversity. I guess not a tremendous amount. It'll all remain to be seen what happens on Sunday. If they can win, great. If not, definitely got to clean it up here as we move along where these games have greater implications. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of the Bucs Report. Again, the best way to help grow this show is to subscribe to the Bucs Report on YouTube. Subscribe, like the videos, comment anything down below. Feed that algorithm. It loves comments. It likes it likes subscriptions. We'll try to get that Bucs Report YouTube channel as big as we can. And of course, for all of your Buccaneers news, check out the BucsReport.com. All right, listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition, and I'll talk to you again next time.